Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today for another webinar in our Market Access and International Approvals webinar series. My name is Lauren and I'm part of the Certification and Approvals technical staff here at Vista Compliance Laboratories. Today I'll be presenting to you the certification and approval regulations as well as the technical requirements for electrical equipment, electronics, and wireless product and device approval in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Communications and Information Technology Commission, or CITC, regulates the telecommunications and information technology sectors in Saudi Arabia. It also handles the import, distribution, and sale of these products on the Saudi Arabian market. The certification and management of regulated products is carried out in an efficient manner so as to prevent any harmful disturbances or interference between products. Through standardization and government policy, the CITC is able to provide quality guarantees to better facilitate the economic growth of Saudi Arabia and to offer the proper protections to the public. Radio frequency devices are required to be properly approved by the relevant certification bodies prior to being marketed or imported into the country. A certificate of type approval is required for regulated devices to be sold in or imported into Saudi Arabia. Some devices may even need a shipment certification to be able to be imported into the country. Vista Laboratories is an EMC and RF compliance test lab and product certification body, and we are experts in global regulatory approvals for radio frequency devices. So, today we'll be going over the requirements for radio frequency and telecommunications approvals in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. In this webinar, we will provide an overview for the major topics necessary to understand to get your radio devices on the right track for authorization and distribution in Saudi Arabia. If you have any questions on the topics presented today, or any other immediate questions regarding compliance testing and product certifications, you can reach us at info@vista-compliance.com. Without further ado, let's begin the presentation. Starting with a brief overview, what is the CITC? The CITC, or Communications and Information Technology Commission, was created to license telecommunications and information technology equipment in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It regulates radio frequency and the standardization of radio and telecom equipment. The CITC ensures compliance of products used in telecommunications with the relevant technical regulations. The CITC also supports the development of technology and efficient use of resources through standardization, management, and supervision of the telecommunications sector. Most of the standards are based on international standards, such as ETSI, and many of the regulations follow HS codes. Many telecommunication and wireless products are subject to Saudi Arabian CITC approval, and it is mandatory for every wireless or telecom device that's produced, assembled, used, or traded within the Saudi Arabian territory to comply with the technical requirements based on the applicable regulations. A certificate of type approval, and for some products, a safety and shipping certificate, are required for radio equipment and other regulated devices to be sold in or imported into Saudi Arabia. Okay, there are actually 3 different certificates of conformity you may have to obtain. For telecom devices, you will either go through the CITC or SASO, depending on the device. SASO is the Saudi Standards, Metrology, and Quality Organization. All equipment using the radio frequency spectrum or intended for telecommunications require both safety and telecom approval before import. Radio and telecom equipment should have the CITC Certificate of Conformity, SASO Certificate of Conformity, and Shipment Certificate of Conformity that is obtained through SABRE. SABRE is the website used to register your products for a SASO certification, and it is also where you will obtain a Shipment Certificate of Conformity if it is required. Any product subject to the technical regulations should obtain a SASO certificate through the SABRE system. SASO certificates for products that don't fall under the technical regulations can be received without SABRE. A full list of the products that fall subject to the technical regulations can be found on the SABRE website. It is important to note that test reports are required to be submitted to obtain the certificate, and products should be tested by a lab that is a member of the ILAC Mutual Recognition Arrangement or a lab that is licensed in the country. Now let's take a brief look at an overview of the approval processes for CITC, SASO, and SABRE. There are two steps to obtaining the CITC Certificate of Conformity. Equipment approval is a procedure that determines to what extent the telecommunications and IT equipment conforms to the technical specifications issued by the Commission. You should go through the equipment approval procedure first to save some time. You will need to register the product in the ICT Equipment Licensing System, which you can find on the CITC website. Submit the equipment approval application along with all the relevant documents such as the datasheet, photos, operational description, declaration of conformity, and test reports. The CITC will review the documents, and if everything is in compliance with the applicable regulations, they will issue a certificate for the equipment approval. Once you have done that, you may go back to the CITC website and submit an application for obtaining the Certificate of Conformity. If your equipment was already approved through the equipment approval procedure, you will be provided immediately with an electronic copy of the Certificate of Conformity. If your product was not previously approved, you will have to go back and apply for equipment approval. Products that fall under the technical regulations must be approved through SABRE. SASO certificates for products that don't fall under the technical regulations can be received without SABRE. You can go to the SABRE website to find all the technical regulations which define what products are regulated. The first step in the SABRE approval process is to register the applicant on the SABRE website. The applicant can be the manufacturer as long as they live in country, or else it'll have to be a local representative or the importer. Next is product registration. If it is a regulated product under the technical regulations, you will need a SASO-approved certification body to submit all the documents to and obtain the certificate. Documents to be submitted to get the certificate are the same as those for the CITC process, including the relevant HS codes that the product is in compliance with. If the product does not fall under the technical regulations, the importer may upload a self-declaration of conformity showing compliance with Saudi standards and taking full responsibility for the product. So, regulated products need to be approved by a SASO-approved certification body that will look over the submission and issue a certification if the product is in compliance. If the regulated product has a valid certificate of conformity, a shipment certificate will be issued only for that shipment period. If you try shipping a product outside of the shipment period, you will be stopped and asked to get a new shipment certificate. If it is an unregulated product not under any of the technical regulations, it does not need to go through the SABRE process, but it could still be subject to surveillance during importation. Here is a list of just a few of the regulated products. The CITC will regulate a lot of these items, like products for navigation in smartphones, but SASO is slowly starting to gain regulation rights to some of these types of products. The products that are regulated will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis according to their datasheet and HS codes. There are some special requirements for mobile phones regulated by the CITC. They must contain the CITC E-label for importation. They have to comply with the technical requirements to enable Cell Broadcast Service or CBS alerts, and they have to support 4G as a requirement for equipment approval and customs clearance. Okay, we had just taken a look at some of the products regulated by the CITC. Now we will look at the technical requirements used to show compliance in Saudi Arabia. The measurement procedures can be classified as either CITC requirements covering EMC and radio frequency, or SASO requirements covering safety. Many of the technical requirements follow European international standards. When applying for type approval, we should be aware of what technical requirements are applicable and appropriate for the device seeking certification. The technical specifications cover most telecommunications and IT equipment applications. They are considered the technical basis for approving and licensing telecommunications and IT equipment. Many technical regulations fall under CE regulations. This here is a short list of some of the many regulated products and their associated document number. These documents can be found on the CITC website under Regulatory Documents in Equipment Approval and Licensing, Technical Specification. The documents contain all the ETSI standards that the product must be in compliance with to be able to be imported into the country. You can see the first item here is the general specifications, and this is what all the regulated products must be in compliance with in order to be imported. SASO is the regulatory body that handles the safety certification for many regulated products. Like the CITC regulations, SASO safety standards also fall under CE regulations. The safety standards are put in place to make sure the product is safe for both consumers and other devices and products. The safety standards in Saudi Arabia follow HS codes, along with the document Gulf Technical Regulations for Low Voltage Electrical Devices and Equipment. The CITC is entitled to request a sample of the equipment for performing the necessary examinations and testing to ensure the conformity to all the requirements. The CITC itself does not perform the tests for products. Test reports should be obtained by a lab that is a member of the ILIC Mutual Recognition Arrangement or examination laboratories licensed in the Kingdom in accordance with the Private Laboratories Law. Test reports will need to be submitted to obtain the Certificate of Conformity. Here are the documents you will need to submit to obtain certification. You need to submit the test reports, technical specification of the product, the user manual, internal and external photos, circuit diagram or schematic, and declaration of conformity. You will also need the applicable HS codes for submission to obtain a SASO Certificate of Conformity. Certification will take about 1 to 2 weeks, depending on which certification you are applying for. The certification process for the CITC will take about 1 to 2 weeks, and SASO safety certification will take about 1 week. The validity period for the CITC certificate is 2 years, while the SASO certificate is valid for 1 year. There is a full renewal process that can start the same day as the certificate expiration date. You will have to go through the certification process again to get a new certificate for your product. I know I said this earlier in the presentation, but it is very important to note that the applicant must reside in Saudi Arabia and be either the manufacturer, local representative, or importer. If you are trying to apply for certification and you do not reside in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, you must have one of these 3 types of applicants named above. Family models are not allowed, so each model will need its own certificate. Modular approvals, however, are allowed. For modular approvals, only the module is covered. Any end-user device will still require approval if it is on the technical regulations list or regulated by the CITC. The only type of labeling required by the CITC is for smart gadgets. It is mandatory for mobile phones, tablets, and other smart devices to obtain an e-label before importation. Any equipment falling under the scope of CITC Technical Specification RI 056, namely UMTS and LTE handsets and related terminal equipment, are required to at least support 4G and contain a CITC e-label to receive approval from the CITC and enter into the country. The label is a mark that the equipment complies with the technical regulations for smart gadgets in Saudi Arabia. After successful approval of one of these products by the CITC, the manufacturer is obligated to mark the applicable products with the e-label and can then put them on the market. The e-label must be shown as it is here, with the words Kingdom of Saudi Arabia above the box and CITC with the certificate number starting with TA below it inside the box. This is an example of the CITC certificate. One of the things found on the certificate is, of course, the certificate number. This is the number that should be shown on the e-label if your product requires a labeling. The certificate also shows information such as the applicant and manufacturer name and address, the certificate issue date and validity period, product name and model, the product's operating frequency, and any of the CITC technical specifications or regulations that the device is in compliance with. This certificate is valid for 2 years and then must go through the approval process again to get the certificate renewed. All equipment being imported into Saudi Arabia must first be certified. The certification is intended to guarantee the interoperability and inner working among products, avoid interference between equipment, protect consumers from being disadvantaged of telecommunication equipment use, and to push technology innovation and national industry. Products that fall under the technical regulations will need a shipment certificate, so you will need to go through the SABRE process to be able to import the product into the country. If these products do not have a required certificate, they will not be allowed into the country, and it will cost both parties valuable time. The conditions for importation are that the applicant must be a Saudi company or have a valid commercial registration. The applicant must also be located in Saudi Arabia and must be able to show that the product is in compliance with the technical regulations. Any piece of equipment that is still made, assembled, or imported to be traded in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia after the 2-year certificate has expired will have to be renewed and recertified. When products are being imported, they go through a procedure to make sure the certificates that accompany the product actually match the product, and that any labels, user manuals, and other specific required items are present. It is essentially the final check of the product to make sure it is ready to be put on the market. Surveillance is actually handled on a case-by-case basis. The CITC reserves the right to obtain any samples to ensure the ongoing conformity with applicable technical regulations. A reason surveillance might happen is if there are multiple customer complaints about the product. If something is not working properly or is behaving as if it is not in compliance with the regulations, the CITC will obtain a sample to ensure conformity. This does not happen that often because some customer complaints could be just user error, but when there are multiple complaints about the same thing, it is grounds for investigation. What are the rules for product changes or modifications to certified equipment? One of the conditions for equipment approval is stated as follows. No alteration has been made to the equipment's specifications or characteristics. This means in order to be in compliance with the equipment approval, no alterations have been made to the product's technical specifications. The manufacturer is prohibited to make any alteration of the technical parameters of the product during its whole life cycle. Alterations could be a violation of the Telecommunications Act depending on how severe the alteration is. If the product is in violation of the Telecommunications Act, there will be a cancellation of the CITC's approval and license. The CITC has the right to take disciplinary action for any violations or major changes to a product. The importer must inform the CITC about any alterations they want to make to the approved equipment before it gets imported into the country. The CITC will let the importer know if the alterations are minimal enough where they can continue with the certificate they already have for the product, or if the changes are too drastic and they must go through the process again to get a new certificate for the altered product. This concludes our webinar on Saudi Arabian market access, certifications, and approvals for electrical equipment and wireless products. I hope this webinar was helpful for you in understanding the process for CITC approval and certifications, as well as what requirements are applicable to your products. Compliance with the technical requirements of the CITC is required for many radio and telecom products and ensures telecommunication network interoperability, avoids interference between telecommunication equipment, and ensures public safety. All electrical equipment and devices require approval in Saudi Arabia prior to distribution or placement on the market. Vista Compliance Labs specializes in certifications, approvals, and compliance testing for electrical and radio frequency devices. We are a 17025 accredited EMC and RF compliance test lab and a 17065 accredited product certification body. We are a telecommunications certification body in the US, Canada, EU, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Japan, and we provide certification and approvals for all product types in countries all over the world. If you would like to stay in touch with our regulatory updates, follow us online. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions on the information presented today, or any general inquiries, you can reach us anytime at info@vista-compliance.com. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.